Gen Z is lazy. This seems to be the common sentiment amongst much of the older generations.
Well, what about the work ethic of Gen Z?
Apparently millennials and Gen Z have a much different view of the American dream.
It seems like nobody wants to work these days.
What's really going on here? Why is Gen Z so reluctant to work the jobs available, and why are so many of them giving up on the idea of a dream job completely? Well, what I believe is that it's not the working itself that Gen Z is less willing to do, it's the type of work that is available and what you're required to do at these jobs that is causing this massive rise in dissatisfaction. So in this video, I'm going to go over all the reasons why burnout and stress in the workplace appears to be at an all-time high, why nobody wants to work anymore, and what we can do moving forward. The graph I'm about to show you might be the last thing that you expected to see. It's the amount of hours worked per week spent at a full-time job in the past 30 years. As you can see, it's gone down by about 2 hours per week since 1994, though the visual style of this graph makes it appear like it's more dramatic. This seems both intuitive and counterintuitive. It's intuitively understood because you'd think that we've created ever more efficient systems to get things done in minutes that used to take hours. But it's counterintuitively understood because people are self-reporting that they are more stressed than they've ever been. Back when the government first tracked workers' hours in 1890, full-time manufacturing employees worked a back-breaking 100 hours each week. Years of pressure from labor organizers, along with changes from companies like Ford Motor, reformed working conditions in the US and protected workers from schedules that endangered their health and safety, which eventually led to the now established 40-hour workweek. This means that the 40-hour workweek has been the standard in the US for around 100 years now, but it's only been the case that the burnout epidemic has been a big thing in recent years. So if it's not the amount of hours that is the main contribution to this problem, it must have to be the type of work we are now engaging with. In order to really understand just how much our idea of work has changed, let's go way back, much farther back than 1890, to the lifestyle that occupied 95% of our time on Earth so far. The lifestyle of our Paleolithic ancestors. Why are we looking at this lifestyle specifically? Because what we have evolved to do most optimally happened during this time. And of course, I'm not saying that humans had it easier during the Paleolithic era when we were literally fighting for our survival every single day. I'm just using this because this is when most of our bodily hardware developed. The work that hunter-gatherers engaged in always required both skill and meaning. You were hunting food for your tribe outside, spending a lot of time on your feet, and doing so ensured your survival. If you conduct any sort of study and ask people the things that give life the most meaning, family will always reign supreme. Now, let me ask you this. How many people in Gen Z or other younger generations see the idea of starting a family as a genuine possibility? Frankly, a lot of these younger generations just don't really know what they're working for. In contrast to the constant collaboration of the tribes of hunter-gatherers collecting food to help your family survive, the loneliness of the modern world, fueled by technology and the growing disparity in the dating market, leaves young people with less of a strong reason to actually try and succeed and build wealth in their lives. And that's not even considering the fact that if you do get a job, it better be paying very well, or else you will not be able to afford the cost of living. We'll go back to that meaning point a little bit later, but I will say in defense against Gen Z, lacking the possibility of starting a family isn't really enough to justify not working at all or not wanting to work at all. In fact, what was ranked number 2 in the thing that gives life the most meaning for most people is their career. So for that, we have to look at the flipping of the job market in the past couple decades or so. While jobs in healthcare, finance, and technology soared, jobs in manufacturing, construction, and other demanding physical labor have not experienced nearly as much growth. Now, you can give your opinion in the comments, but I'd argue that your physical labor job in the modern world is much more comparable to hunter-gatherers than your typical 9-to-5 office job. And therefore, they are usually keyword usually, less capable of being burnt out from, especially if you are working the same sort of 9 to 5, 40-hour work week as someone in an office job. For one, you're probably working with a team in person. You can't afford to do work alone when you're working in construction or welding or building different machinery. In your typical office job though, it's likely that you're on a team, but the dynamic of that team is far different. The culture of office jobs feels like forced friendships, smiles, and a much less strong sense of direction as to why you're even doing the things you're doing. You can't visually see and feel the progress you are making, and I'm sure that contributes to the slang that a lot of young people call these jobs, which are soulless corporations.
Hey, did you have a good weekend? Hey, how was your weekend? Can you believe it's only Wednesday? Almost Friday. You have any good weekend plans? Happy Friday. You have any good weekend plans?
These feelings are reflected in the decline in engagement and employer satisfaction among remote Gen Z and younger millennial workers. And to clarify, when I use the term employee engagement, I'm referring to the level of commitment and emotional connection employees feel to their organization, work, and team. The percentage of engaged employees under the age of 35 dropped by 4 percentage points from 2019 to 2022. And during the same time, the percentage of actively disengaged employees increased by 6 points. Younger workers have dropped 9 or more points in the percentage who strongly agree that someone cares about them, someone encourages their development, and they have opportunities to learn and grow. And that could be part of the explanation for the now popular trend that is called quiet quitting. If you aren't familiar with quiet quitting, it's the act of never going above and beyond your job description and doing the absolute bare minimum in order to stay at a job you're unsatisfied with or eventually resign and get fired. I know what you might be thinking, and I'm with you. This just sounds like working. It just sounds like a fancy, trendy way to say that you're gonna do the work that you have to do that's within your role and you're not gonna do any more than that. There's gotta be a label for everything these days, I guess, and I'm certainly not innocent of putting labels on things that shouldn't have labels either. But I do think it's important to highlight this trend in this video due to the decrease in employee engagement in recent years. If you've been feeling heavily dissatisfied with your job, your life, and you just feel like there's no real purpose or meaning behind things that you're doing, something that could help you, that really helped me, is speaking with a professional therapist, and that is why I want to talk about today's sponsor, BetterHelp. Loneliness is deafening, and when you can't talk to other people in real life about your problems, it only exacerbates those problems and makes them stay in your head. Speech with a therapist helped me so much in the past when I was going through a lot of things, specifically in regards to burnout. In a period in 2021, I had really terrible burnout to the point where I was experiencing physical problems, and I went to therapy for that. It helped so much. He helped me reframe my problems and gave me actionable steps that I could do to actually start fixing this. And I took a long time off of YouTube during that time, and I don't think I really would have come to that conclusion if it were not for therapy. So what BetterHelp does is it's going to connect you to a licensed therapist who is trained to give you unbiased, helpful advice. You go to their sites and you can use my link, betterhelp.com/Cole. You answer a few questions and then they match you to a professional who has years of experience helping people with struggles just like yours. You'll usually be matched to a therapist within 48 hours, and you can speak to them, whether that's a phone call or a video call or messaging. They have a lot of different options for you. And one of the best parts about this platform that you can't really do in real life is that you can switch your therapist for free at any time. So if you want to start therapy all from the comfort of your own home, you can go to my link, betterhelp.com/Cole, or you can just use my channel name, Cole Hastings, during checkout, and you're going to get a discount off your first month of therapy. One of the other biggest factors to burnout that is specifically tied to office jobs is the sedentary lifestyle. A sedentary lifestyle is responsible for so much of the modern world's dissatisfaction and burnout. Unlike a manual labor job where you'll be on your feet, picking up heavy things, increasing your heartbeat, and maybe being outside too, sitting in front of a computer screen, exerting mental power is actually extremely draining. For some context, and so I don't just sound like a babbling idiot who doesn't know what they're talking about, before content creation became my full-time job, I was working as a busser in many different restaurants for years. I'd be constantly on the move, picking up plates, cleaning tables, resetting them, setting up for events until I eventually went home and absolutely knocked out in bed until the next day. And while yes, I did despise the type of work that I was doing, I never want to be a busser again, I never experienced the type of burnout that I do from sitting at my computer for too long in a given day. And that's considering that what I do right now, content creation, is so much more meaningful and purposeful, and I enjoy it so much more. If I spend too much time working rigorously at my computer, I feel more anxious, more frustrated, confused, and it's much harder to fall asleep. We've already gotten science to show how harmful blue light is in disrupting your sleep cycles, and I have experienced firsthand what it's like to have insomnia from computer stimulation overload. Again, hunter-gatherers may have had to do far greater hours of work just to survive, but it didn't involve the sort of technological disruptors to our psychology that we are required to engage with today. I mean, I doubt they had trouble getting sleep after a full day of working outside. Speaking of psychological disruptors, let's look at what isn't part of the physical demands of work. The mind occupiers. The mind occupiers, a term I just decided to make up, are what you must hold and think about in your mind while you are working at your job. So let's start with the hunter-gatherers. The roles and objectives of everyone in the tribe were clearly defined. What was most likely the mother's task for the day was to nurture and tend to the children, a single task that you knew you could complete in a certain amount of time. For the men, they had one, maybe two tasks. Go find the food and maybe make shelter. The consequences of not completing those tasks in a given amount of time were also clear. You would either starve or your children would suffer. Not too unlike the hunter-gatherers in having this singular, clearly defined tasks are a lot of manual labor jobs in the modern world. There are rarely unexpected things that come up, and you can only focus on one thing at a time because you don't have time for distractions when you're on your feet and or moving your hands. You can visually see the progress you're making as you go along with your work, and you likely can't afford to juggle a couple things at once. Now let's contrast that with the typical desk job. Most people who work at a typical desk job on a team have a massive list of obligations and commitments. They're always available for a surprise meeting in the middle of the day, which ends up adding another unexpected part or task to their work, only adding more to their already overflowing plate of mind occupiers. At the same time you're trying to finish your first project, you're in a Zoom meeting talking about a second project or talking about nothing that's actually going to make progress for your company, and having deadlines changed, and the communication from your manager about what you're even supposed to be doing is often unclear. This causes a brain short circuit in the part of your brain that is dedicated to making long-term plans. When you have 700 messages in your inbox, ever more commitments and tasks, and you don't even really know what you're supposed to be doing, it becomes too many things for your brain to imagine it can accomplish and finish, and therefore it short circuits. The best visual representation for what an overoccupied mind looks like in a modern job is a browser with hundreds of tabs open at once. The computer, your brain, has a limited amount of access memory at any given time, and in a standard office job, you're maxing out the storage space until your brain eventually crashes. It's been shown that less than 4 in 10 young remote or hybrid employees clearly know what is expected of them at work. That is a pretty insane statistic. Never has this overload of information been so much of a problem as it is today, and the uncertainty and the lack of progress it makes you feel like you're not making, I believe, is a huge part of the reason why young workers feel so dissatisfied with their work, and they're feeling more burnt out than ever, even in these jobs that don't require intense physical labor. Again, I want to make a nuance clear. I am generalizing physical labor jobs and office jobs. I am sure that there are physical labor jobs that are way more demanding and make you feel more burnt out than a lot of office jobs out there, but in general, the majority of jobs that cause this sort of burnout tend to be the 9-to-5 office jobs. I think that also indirectly brings up another point about these 9-to-5 office jobs, which is the relentless pacing, and the lack of productive breaks. I'd like to bring up that first graph that I showed you at the start of the video again, the one that shows that working hours have been slowly decreasing. There's actually a part of that research that I purposely left out from the website that I got it from. While yes, the average amount of hours working per week have decreased, the amount of time Americans are choosing to take off of work is actually decreasing. America is famously known as the no vacation nation, as we do not guarantee paid vacation for our workers. And even though we have around 12 federal holidays, many people choose to work on their time off, either to make more money in an economy that demands you do, or to catch up on the plethora of metaphorical browser tabs open in their minds. So what that first graph fails to take into account is how many more hours people are putting in outside of their working hours in order to catch up. Now let's compare that to the work of hunter-gatherers. They had potentially a full day of working, but apart from how direct, easily definable, and purposeful their work was, they also had very long breaks within their days between working sessions. I mean, we're talking about doing absolutely nothing for 2 to 3 hours during the workday, whether that was napping or just chilling and talking with friends. And that natural pacing of going up and down in the intensity of work throughout the day is much more in congruence with how we are meant to work, and that is not usually what office jobs are like. So now we are acutely aware of the issues of modern work. Gen Z lacks purpose and meaning that has been reinforced by how our relationships with each other have changed in recent years. They're less willing to put up with work bullshit and be exploited because they grew up on the internet where the lies from the past and present have been revealed for anyone to see. They can see that working a dead-end job for a corporation that doesn't care about them, that views them as dispensable, is bonkers when someone can go on social media, say "Hawk Tua," go viral, and make millions from selling merch off their phrase. And when they do decide to commit to the role of the traditional office job, the way that they are working is completely unaligned with the way that we evolved to make progress and do work. You see, humans are meant to make progress and accomplish goals. We love the feeling of setting a goal and having a purpose to strive towards and completing those things. And the fact that so many young people share this general consensus that we are fed up with work completely clearly shows how much of the work we now do is in a dysfunctional, unnatural state. So the question now remains, what do we do? Or what can you do yourself? This is usually the part in the video where most people click off, and I can see that because I can see my audience retention. So if you actually care about this issue and you want to change it, don't be like most people. Well, firstly, it's obvious that there's gotta be some sort of governmental reforms. I'm talking paid leave, more flexibility in the workplace, and incentives to shift the culture of office jobs. I've been saying this for a while now, but I'm hopeful that once the old heads that are in office right now die out and Gen Z becomes older, their policies that they want to see enforced on work and leisure time will be reflected in how they feel about work in the current moment and how work should be conducted. But that doesn't leave us a lot of room to make changes right now ourselves. The greatest educator on the topic of healing from burnout culture that I've found, who heavily helped me construct this video, is Stanford professor Cal Newport. I really like his approach to fighting back against hustle culture because he doesn't just bash capitalism as an economic system. He doesn't say that the only reason we are working too hard is because of exploitative capitalist narratives, which then overload our personal lives because we internalize these narratives. He tries to confront the negatives of capitalism and find solutions to the downside so that we can function optimally in this capitalist society. He states, there is of course a subversive trapdoor energy in this materialism that's not entirely misguided. There are many areas in which a constant scrutiny of labor relations is warranted, and the allure of consumerist affluence is far from benign. But a pure materialist interpretation of overload culture severely limits our responses, leaving us, if you'll excuse some mild facetiousness, with only the option to occasionally engage in non-instrumental activities as an act of resistance while waiting for others to overthrow the capitalist market economy. In simpler terms, because that was a lot of big words, consumer culture, yes, is not always good, but only focusing on materialism doesn't lead us to many solutions. It simply limits us to doing small, non-productive activities while we wait around for others to eventually change the capitalist system. This is where Cal's solution comes in, something he calls slow productivity. His slow productivity philosophy consists of 3 key ideas: doing fewer things, working at a natural pace, and obsessing over quality. Busyness is not synonymous with productivity, and if anything, it's actually the complete opposite. When companies and managers realize that assigning specific, singular, clearly defined tasks to each individual and giving them a reasonable amount of time to complete these things actually leads to better and more progress, that's when these office jobs can start to have more of a sense of accomplishment behind them. And I really think that this starts with the managers of whatever company you work for. Based on all the data I've collected and everything I've heard from my partner or other people who have office jobs, it seems that a good manager is the biggest difference between an amazing job and an absolutely terrible job. All the factors that I went over that contribute the most to employee dissatisfaction: unfair treatment at work, unmanageable workload, unclear communication, lack of manager support, and unreasonable time pressure, are the manager's responsibility. Besides switching jobs until you find an actually good manager, which technically is a solution, you could start by communicating to your manager what they've been doing right, what they've been doing wrong, and how they can improve upon these things that are making you feel unwanted and purposeless and confused in the workplace. Although if they embody these traits that I just went over, then that manager is probably going to be really reluctant to change and take your feedback. But it is a start. If there are any managers or leaders watching this video, I do hope that you've taken into account what I've said, and I'm gonna leave some resources in the description as well, actually, that go into more detail on how managers can be better managers and leaders. Now, I do understand that for many of you watching, a lot of you might get into good office jobs with good managers and you still feel those effects of severe burnout and you just don't really feel that strong sense of purpose towards what you're doing. In that case, it is on you to create something that has value and can put meaning into your daily routine, the thing you call your career. If you find an office job is not the job for you, it is up to you to use the abundance of information we now have access to create a lifestyle that induces a ton of meaning out of what you regularly do and is more in congruence with what we were evolved to be doing. I know it's incredibly alluring in this day and age to want to tackle a million different things at once and always be busy and want to make $1 million as quickly as possible, but just start with one clearly defined singular task or goal or purpose. Identify exactly what you need to be doing each day to get there and spend a large part of your time in complete boredom. And that doesn't mean scrolling through your phone. I mean doing absolutely nothing, which Cal Newport constantly emphasizes is the best way, or one of the best ways, to produce better work. As he puts it, great work doesn't require more activity, it requires more profound insights. Most of the greatest minds you can think of each generation spent a huge chunk of their time doing absolutely nothing but walking, laying on top of benches, or just staring at the sky, working at their own pace until they naturally got to the solutions they needed. And if we can try to create more job environments that replicate these innate forms of productivity and shift the narrative behind what it really means to be productive, we can connect back to being the species that genuinely gets excited at the thought of working and making progress once again. I'm going to leave a link in the description to Cal Newport's book, Slow Productivity, because I was just scratching the surface here, and I think it's such an incredible book that goes deeper into why productivity right now is not the productivity we should be striving towards, and how to change that and what you should really be doing. So check that out in the description. Also, if you are passionate about self-improvement and you like working hard and you want to find more of a purpose and you just want to discuss these types of ideas with like-minded people, I have a free self-improvement community that is also linked in my description below. If you like these video essays where I tackle modern issues, which a lot of you guys seem to, I'm going to leave the playlist to all of them here. So if you want to check those out and see more of my thoughts and opinions And you can comment your opinions on this video below as well, actually. Let me know. Yeah, check right here. You can check those out. All right, I'm going now. It's so fucking late right now. I need to stop being so productive. Goodbye.